Hello and welcome to, oh gosh, what episode is this? 12, isn't it?
I think it's 12.
Welcome to episode 12 of the 7 Minutes podcast where we talk about games and such. I am one of your hosts, Zack.
I am Robert.
And I am Angela.
Cool. Our topic for today is going to be, in quotes, game design sins or bad game design, or maybe with a question mark. Like what actually counts as bad game design versus...
Probably better put as things that people typically complain about as bad game design.
Sure.
I sense we will not all agree.
Yeah, and questioning those claims.
Yeah, precisely. But before we get to that, what have the two of you been playing since we last recorded?
Well, I'll start because it's simple. Final Fantasy XIV. That has been taking over quite a lot of my after work time. I have now gotten out of A Realm Reborn, and I am in Heavensward.
The critically acclaimed first expansion.
Yes.
Heavensward.
Yes.
I have continued to play Gears. My girlfriend and I are going through, allegedly, the whole series. I think she owns everything up to 4. I probably have up to Judgment. I don't even think I have 4. So we'll have to figure out when we get to that point what we're going to do. But I am on 2 with her right now. I've also been reading the Gears of War novels, which are really good. I actually think all those characters are really well designed and portrayed. So the books have been fun. And then I've been playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. We got a review key for that for Nintendo Joe. That's been a total throwback for me. I just wrote about this in my weekly column, Bits and Bytes. Shameless plug. But yeah, like I remember when that game came out, I have never had any interest in skateboarding and still don't. But I wanted that game badly before it launched because Nintendo Power had been hyping it up like they do everything. But I think part of the appeal for me was that Tony Hawk was really different from most N64 games, not just because of like the gameplay, but like the world that you're in. Because I was thinking how like when Mario 64 came out, part of the appeal of it was just wandering around Peach's castle, like the grounds. Mm-hmm. And it was that sensation of being in this 3D world. And then most of what came out after that for N64 was like, you know, you had like Zelda with Hyrule Field and all that world to explore, or you had like Banjo-Kazooie types of worlds, but you didn't really have anything like real, like nothing realistic.
So you're talking about, I guess, the more versus less fantastical worlds as the thing that's different about Tony Hawk?
Yes, I think that was the appeal. Because it was like, whoa, like it looks like you're in a real world in that game.
Yeah, it's really just like that and GoldenEye and like Winback in terms of like kind of like real world games that I can think of for N64.
And like Spidey 64, you know, you're kind of in a real world for that too, but... Tony Hawk just was like a slice of life. And like this is before Grand Theft Auto. So I think that you're starting to get that idea of like the sandbox world and like how it's sometimes fun to just wander around aimlessly in like a simulation of like reality. So I think that was a big part of the appeal for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to think of like older than Tony Hawk games that are designed to just be, whether you call it a sandbox or just like, you know, I mean, there are literal skate park games on older consoles, but...
Yeah. Well, I think the 3D is the novelty here. Because it's like, you know, that sensation of being in this rendered 3-dimensional environment. And then Tony Hawk comes along and it's like, well, instead of being in a desert or a haunted house or something, it's like, here's just a warehouse or a school or a mall.
Yeah, no, I think there is something different about it. I don't know that it's the 3D specifically. I mean, obviously that's going to change the effect of it, but you also have a lot more tricks you can do. So it's a more interesting space because there's more things you can do to interact with every bit of that space. I remember like it's like Skate or Die on the NES. Mm-hmm. You could do like tricks in a half pipe, but like the tricks really just come down to whether you're doing like 360 or 720 or whatever, you know, a lot less detailed in terms of how you can move around.
So yeah, that's what I've been playing lately.
Same nutritional gamer period for me, or pyramid rather. Mostly Final Fantasy 14, and still a little bit of Greedfall. I think I'm getting close to the end on Greedfall. It's not getting.
Thank
don't.
God.
Okay. Most of my time is going to Final Fantasy 14, but Greedfall is a nice kind of like way to decompress towards the. Angela's about to say something mean about Greedfall.
Why is everyone in Greedfall hideous?
Well, they're not. That's the simple answer.
I mean, they are.
Well, no, they're not.
I think the only one that's not is the like conquistador looking dude with the mustache.
Petrus?
I guess so. He has like the good voice actor.
Well, he's not the only one with a good voice actor, but his is particularly good.
The only one with the good voice acting?
Well, no. No. Vasco's voice acting is good. Come on.
Well, who's Vasco? Which one's that?
Bit of poison on my blade,
No.
and let's go.
No. I'm so tired of hearing that phrase.
He's the best.
So tired.
He's the best party member because he increases my intuition score, which means I can realize things that I wouldn't realize otherwise.
But you still haven't realized it's a bad game.
It's not a bad game. Still deciding whether I want to buy the DLC.
No, please.
So everyone in the household loves Greedfall.
Well, this is a perfect segue. You know, that's an element of bad game design, ugly characters.
Yeah.
That is not the kind of game design I had in mind for discussion, at least.
Huh?
All right, so
Jeez.
I'll start us off. Let's do one of the hot button issues of the 2000s. Let's do QuickTime events. So for those who don't know or recall, a QuickTime event is when you do a scripted sequence of gameplay where you're not actually directly controlling your player. You're instead just hitting button prompts that are appearing on the screen. So Resident Evil 4 had a few of these where it's like a rapidly tap A or press these two buttons together and you'll make Leon, jump out of the way of danger or cut someone or whatever.
I don't know if Resident Evil 4 was the first game to use QuickTime events, but I do think it was the first mainstream.
Oh, I didn't say it was the first.
No, I'm not trying to call you out, Robert. I'm just saying, I think, can you think of like a major mainstream?
I can't remember what the first QTE game was. And I'm also not sure if it came into prominence with the Xbox PS3 era or not.
I think it was RE4 in the PS2 GameCube era.
I can definitely say that RE4 was the first game I ever played with QTEs.
And then God of War also makes heavy use of QTEs, and that's also same console generation. I think with RE4 is the point of reference.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever really understood the disdain for QuickTime events. Unless the whole game is QuickTime events, but other than that, it's just usually it's a nice kind of break. And it tends to focus on things that you're never really going to be able to do in gameplay anyway. You might be able to have a knife fight, but it's never going to be as intricate as Krauser versus Leon is in the QuickTime event version of it. Mm-hmm. So I think it allows designers to kind of add in these sequences where instead of just sitting on your butt watching a movie, you at least get a sense that you're impacting it.
So what's your understanding? And I can try and make the case if you don't feel you're up to it, but what's your understanding of why people don't like QuickTime events, or why somebody might say that a QuickTime event is bad game design?
Well, I'll let you do it.
Okay. Well, specifically seen people complain about the Krauser knife fight, because you can get through, most of the way through this cutscene, fail, and then it's okay, well, I got to go back and watch and play through the same cutscene again. So the cutscene kind of loses some of its cinematic momentum if the player fails, right? And also people will say well, if you're focused on the QuickTime event, you're not really watching the scene. You're watching for the button prompt, which is not as immersive. And it can be something that's maybe more fun to watch than to play through, at which point, why not just have a cutscene?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I agree with that last bit completely. I mean, you're playing a game at the end of the day. So if the game's saying, pay attention, press buttons, it's well, that's part of the gameplay. I don't really think that complaint is the best. In terms of, though, the momentum getting killed, if you drop dead during that fight, I actually, it's not the same thing because it's not a QuickTime event, but playing Gears, there have been times where I've gone through like whole long segments of ducking and covering and shooting and killing things and then died. And all of a sudden it's sending me way back. And I'm just like, what is with this checkpoint system? It's like, I just slaughtered like 30 grubs and it took forever, died, and now I got to do it again. So like in terms of a QuickTime event, I could see that being annoying, especially because you don't have... This is one of the reasons this is like a personal Robert thing. I don't really watch TV or that many movies. I don't like video because I don't have the patience for it a lot of the time, because it's like if the movie's 30 minutes long or the show, you're there for 30 minutes. It's never going to be any faster than that. Whereas if I'm reading something, my reading speed dictates how quickly I'm ingesting it. So in terms of a QuickTime event, if it's making you watch this little movie in conjunction with the button prompts, you're going to sit there for that duration every time. So I could see how that would get annoying.
Do you have that frustration with cutscenes in general?
Cutscenes, it doesn't bug me. Because I'm playing the game, and it's just part of the game, and I'm like, all right, this is kind of fun. And plus, like, I like seeing the artistry of, the designers created this scene. It's like a little movie.
But you don't extend that to the QuickTime events?
No, I'm saying right now I can see how that would annoy someone. I mean, I guess it annoys me to an extent because it's the same principle as, Marcus suddenly has to re-slaughter the same 30 grubs. And I guess you could say, especially in the earlier games, because I don't know as much about now, but earlier games they would have just been learning how to grapple with this, right? So like maybe instead of having Krauser slaughter Leon when you press the button wrong, maybe if they could go back in time, they'd be like, okay, well maybe it just results in like a fumbled knife thrust, and then it restarts that bit over again, as opposed to restarting the entire fight over again.
Yeah, I think it's a little painful to ask the player to sit through half of a cutscene, or even a third of a cutscene, just to get to a QuickTime event. I think there should be maybe an option to skip ahead. You have to watch it the first time you play through. If you fail the QuickTime event and you have to start over, there should be an option to let you skip ahead right through, a few seconds before you need to do that QTE. So that way you don't have to sit there and watch the whole thing however many times.
Have either of you played either Ninja Blade or... what was the other one? The one that CyberConnect made, Ashura's Wrath. Mm-hmm. Both of those are supposed to be extremely QTE heavy games. Mm-hmm. And I've seen people go to bat for Ashura's Wrath, which basically doesn't have any gameplay except for QTEs, but uses them in like a more expressive way. So to try and like get you in the head of the character. Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't particularly like the Krauser knife fight scene in Resident Evil 4, but the other QTEs in RE4 I think do work pretty well. Mm-hmm. Kind of like, because it's like, the situation is like there's a boulder coming at Leon. Leon's panicking. You kind of mimic panic by hammering on a button really quickly or waggling the Wiimote if it's the Wii version. And I do think that can help. It's a good representation, a good gameplay representation of that sense of panic.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with them just as a gameplay feature. I think there's some merit to the argument that they can be utilized in ways that aren't ideal. But I don't have a problem with them as just a mechanic overall.
And the other criticism I've seen that I'll try and convey properly is if you consider more of like its use in God of War, it gets used as a finisher a lot of the time, right? You're weakening an enemy, and then you get presented with like the finisher on top of an enemy, and like in a way it's more like the glory kill mechanic from Doom. But the argument is basically you have this whole combat system with all these buttons, all these different ways you can expressively play. If you have the player do a QuickTime event instead of using like the main combat system, it's not going to be as interesting, which I don't really think is a fair read of say God of War, because it's using it as kind of like an accent on the combat system, right? Mm-hmm. You can take action deliberately to put enemies into the state where you can do the QuickTime event, and then you get to enjoy that too. Mm-hmm. It sounds like we have judged QuickTime events to be innocent of the crime of bad game design.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So what's next?
One thing that we were going over a list before we started recording, and one thing that I had actually been thinking about recently because I was playing this game recently. They get referred to as like walkie-talkies, but scenes in a game, and especially in these kind of more modern, self-important AAA games, like
Sony
the last.
games.
Yes, thank you. The Last of Us and Days Gone. These scenes where you're walking and talking, and I don't know. I don't hate them. I just think that they have been overused, and I had made the comparison to like how they kind of remind me of the scenes in any Law and Order show where there's the walking and talking moment where the detectives are talking to a witness or a suspect or whatever, and they're at their job, or they're walking down the street, and it's just it's really formulaic the way that they're done. And I feel like every game I've ever played that has these, they're always enacted in the same way. I don't know. I don't hate them. I just think that maybe they've been overused. And they tend to get overused in these games that, take themselves very seriously.
I don't know that they always really serve a purpose that I can grasp. Because, like, Gears, there are countless times where Marcus stops and is like, command! And then Command starts talking to him, and then he comes to a crawl. You can't move. You can't even walk normally. He's slowly walking with his hand to his ear, listening to instructions or whatever. And I think this is also in like Arkham Asylum, if I'm remembering correctly. I think there are times where Batman pauses and slowly walks. And it's just like, why is it making me slow down? Because like, I'm just going to advance to the next area, and like, there's no reason that the dialogue couldn't just be happening while I'm walking. Even if a firefight starts, it's like, you're still just going to listen to it. So
I do feel like they think it adds something atmospheric, that it's very realistic, that Batman would slow down, put his fingers to his ear, and listen to a little communicator in his ear, as opposed to just continuing to run or continuing to walk at the same speed.
So I think it's trying to solve a couple of problems. They tend to replace like expository cutscenes, right? So rather than like going into a cutscene where this information is exchanged, like you leave the player some kind of control, right? So they can walk forward and kind of feel like they're still embodying the character while this exposition happens. And then the other thing is it can help with load times, right? Because you're throttling the player's movement, and it gives you more time to like load in whatever the next firefight is or whatever.
Yeah. I'm pretty positive. I haven't finished Days Gone, but thinking back on what I've played, I know I have heard more than once, some character tell me, I come onto their camp, and only takes a few minutes before somebody's like, walk with me, Deke. And it's like, oh, for God's sake, I gotta sit and like listen to somebody's tales of woe, and so it's okay, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah, I much prefer kind of similar, but I think less frustrating is kind of like the BioShock loudspeaker thing, right? or you find like an audiolog or somebody comes over the PA and is talking to you, but you're still able to engage with the gameplay fully. I find that much less frustrating.
You actually just brought another one to mind that we hadn't put on the list. Audiologs. That's a big one that people complain about. They don't really care for that. Environmental storytelling. Environmental storytelling I have no problem with. I actually think it's really cool. I actually get drawn into environmental storytelling very much. In Days Gone, I really enjoy finding the recordings of the Nero agents. When you find the Nero stations and you're listening to them getting overrun by freakers.
So by environmental storytelling, you're talking, because that's kind of a big topic, but you mean like finding like logs or notes or whatever?
Logs, notes.
Before we move on to that, let's render the verdict on the walk and talk. So
the
good
walk,
or bad? The
walk and talk I don't think is inherently bad. I just think it's a bit overused.
I think it's worse than the problems it was trying to fix. I think it can have its place, but in general, you just kind of get, it's a cutscene, but with worse cinematography, and the player has to hold up on the analog stick. So that, to me, in most cases, I think it's bad. So I'm willing to bite the bullet on this one, and I generally try to be understanding, but I hate these.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would say the walk and talk's a little annoying. It's like, I think I'd almost rather just have a loading screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, in terms of this, the environmental storytelling, I think the master of this is Retro Studios with the 3 Metroid Prime games, where it's like you scan these data terminals and you get all these bits of narrative that you wouldn't otherwise get. But I also think it's kind of cool because it's like there's one sequence of like actual genuine sequential storytelling in Metroid Prime, like specifically the first game, where you're getting the Chozo lore, and it is describing like the coming of the Phazon comet that hits the planet. But otherwise, it's more just like these pirate logs, and it's randomly telling you, oh, we've been doing these experiments. This went right. This went wrong. And it's fleshing out the things that you're encountering, but without feeling like it's just a storybook. And I just think it's so well done. I feel like the first game's probably the best of them with the data logs, but that's some really good environmental storytelling.
Part of what I really enjoyed while I was playing Ghost of Tsushima was collecting the Mongolian artifacts. They didn't necessarily tell... They didn't advance the specific storyline, but they did teach you about the culture of the Mongols at that time. And I thought that was incredibly fascinating. You only learn so much about the Mongols in school. Anything else you would have had to have learned about yourself. And so I thought it was really interesting reading all of that. And the notes. You find a lot of different letters and notes around the world, things that people have left behind to family, instructions telling them we've fled here, meet us here, we couldn't wait for you any longer, we hope we see you again. And so it really helps flesh out the environment and the story and what's going on when you find those notes.
Witcher 3 has a lot of things like that are kind of off the beaten path, and most players can ignore them completely, just like hidden treasure things. But the hidden treasure usually has like a note attached, and it does have stories like that about, somebody who turned to a life of banditry because of something, right? And you it's completely optional, but if you engage with it, it does kind of deepen your immersion in the world. I
really like in The Witcher 3 the boards that you can go to in the different towns and cities, and in between, the notes from the locals asking for help, asking for a witcher, or asking for a man capable of X, Y, and Z, you get just someone who's like, return my wheelbarrow, you fuck. Like these things that are just slices of life in these villages. Like Zach said, you completely ignore them. They do nothing. There's no purpose other than to just add some color to the world.
Yeah, I think an example of this kind of storytelling being handled really poorly would be Final Fantasy 13, which does have a really interesting world in terms of the lore. Like the theology of Final Fantasy 13 is super interesting. But you're not going to know any of it unless you go out of your way to go into the menu to look at all the log files, which is fine if you're motivated to do that, but the game doesn't really, the story doesn't work if you don't spend a lot of extra time looking through the log files. So that's a case of it not working, because it's where it works, it's A, optional, right? It's optional content, so the game shouldn't depend on it, and B, the player is motivated to go looking for it. And neither of those things are really true in Final Fantasy 13. Part of the reason it works in Prime is you get this, Metroid Prime, is you get this novel ability to scan the environment, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of conditioned to be like, oh, well, I wonder what I can find with this new toy of scanning the environment.
Mm-hmm. Well, also too, the narrative doesn't really need a lot of fleshing out. Mm-hmm. You can go off of just the very basic, here's Samus's mission, and never scan anything but terminals that activate elevators, and you can do it. I think that it's less enjoyable, but I also think that there are certain people who are like, I don't care about the backstory. Mm-hmm. And because it's not super intricate, it's easy to get away with it in that state. But if you take something like Final Fantasy 13 and it's here's 1,000 menus to go through and a bunch of things to read, it's that starts to get oh man.
Yeah.
This is separate but related. Like with certain RPGs, when the menus are just endless and it's just like sub-menu within sub-menu, and I start to just not care because it's like, man, do I need like a textbook just to learn how to play? Like, what the hell is this?
You would not like Final Fantasy 14, at least not its menu system.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that like there's definitely an element of good versus bad like UI design in these things, but also some games are just more complicated. Like Final Fantasy 14 could definitely have better UI, but at the same time, you're going to have a lot of menus in order to deal with all that customization.
That, I think, is a good lead into tutorials, but...
and menu screens.
Yeah, because the UI is important, because it's like if the way of getting to the... these bits of the story are hindered by like just too many button prompts and menus to sift through, that could totally kill it. I will end my thought on this with one other impediment for environment.
I'm still talking about like audiologs and datalogs,
because it's still environmental storytelling we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
One deterrent for me is if it's like audio based. If the voice acting sucks, that's a problem. My exacting standards, I'm making air quotes that you can't see, but like voice acting has to be good in a game for me to tolerate it. Or if it's like campy in a good way, like Metal Gear can be kind of over the top, but the talent is so good, I love listening to it. But like some of these Sony style, giant sandbox games, it's like the team thinks they've just put together this incredible work of acting, and it's like, this voice is super annoying, or this dialogue is cheesy and overwritten, and I don't want to hear this audio log.
Yeah, like Days Gone has a mix of some good voice actors. I think the dude who plays Cope, don't believe the lies. I think that he's really good. Radio Free Oregon. I think he's a great voice actor, but even like the guy who plays Deacon, I mean, he can have his moments where I know he's supposed to be a little nuts, but it's almost comical. You're going through the overworld, and he's like, okay, you fuckers, I'm gonna kill you all. All right, and like just this weird like breathing.
I think for a lot of these games, like Deke's got his own issues. Like I don't understand that decision to characterize and perform in that way, but like a lot of these games, part of the problem with the voice acting is just the material's not that strong.
Yes.
Like if you have a giant game with a ton of dialogue, a ton of writing in it, chances are some of it's gonna suck. And like depending on how much sucks and how much of that is voiced, like it's like, well, this is just mediocre. Like I don't just want to listen to mediocre storytelling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why through the entirety of A Realm Reborn, I was skipping 98% of the spoken dialogue because the voice acting in A Realm Reborn is so bad. Then you get to Heaven's Word, it's exponentially better.
Yeah.
It is very good to listen to, very well done.
I think my favorite voice acting in terms of like, it's not really like environmental storytelling, but it definitely is adding to the experience, is Modern Warfare 2. I thought that particular cast and all the characters, and even just the side guys, like the grunts that are with you, it totally sounds like, well, yeah, I've never been to war, so, but like it sounds realistic. Like it feels like this is what a bunch of army dudes would be saying to each other.
Yeah.
Short of like, the perverted jokes they probably tell each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like when you're listening to them and you're playing that game, like it's just like the audio. The audio is just so well done. It's like, man, these guys really sound like dudes who are talking to each other.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes to my point of like, obviously that's a much shorter campaign with a much greater emphasis on like cinematic immersion, right? Which is like going to be much easier to make every line compelling because it's gonna have so much more focus on it compared to like random audio in The Witcher 3 or Tomb Raider 2013 or whatever.
I was just about to say, my only complaint, really, I think, about The Witcher 3 is Dandelion's voice actor.
Geralt.
Yeah, everybody's got this incredibly sophisticated voice actor that's voicing them. I think everybody has an English accent, except for Dandelion. And I don't get what that decision was. I mean, I understand he's supposed to be obnoxious, but it's just so jarring. You get this American who's like, Geralt, my buddy, how's it going? Like,
the thing is, like,
who chose this guy?
Geralt and Dandelion, I think, are the two characters that have American accents. And it's kind of like that was a decision based on where they're both from.
Yeah.
Like,
I totally can see that as a reasoning, but Geralt is the perfect example of the American voice actor that works very well in this environment, but Dandelion just does not.
For Geralt, I think, is because he's doing kind of like a Clint Eastwood cowboy archetype as a character, and so it feels more fitting for him.
Yeah,
we've really
okay. Oh yeah. So anyway, environmental storytelling. I'm a big fan of environmental storytelling.
I say it works when it's a little. I think it works when you have less. Less is more with it.
Okay.
I would say you can't have it be like absolutely load bearing, and you need to do the work to make sure people are incentivized to do it rather than taking it for granted. But I think it's good.
Well, we dipped a toe into tutorials / like menu design and UI elements. I was telling Robert and Zack this earlier. I stopped playing Pokemon Sun and Moon because of the tutorial. I have never had that experience in a Pokemon game prior to that. I was so angry. I remember shutting off the game and complaining to Zack about it. It took about a half an hour, and it was just so... I don't know why the word insulting keeps coming up. Maybe that's a bit hyperbolic, but it felt insulting to me. Pokemon, there are new players every single generation. I understand wanting to cater to new players, but this was just... It was a slog. It took so long. It felt like a tutorial, and it absolutely shouldn't. You just... Pokemon, especially the earlier games, you just start. You figure it out as you're playing. And then you have this obnoxious, friend, rival, the cherry on top of this mud pie.
It's an understandable choice for Pokemon in a sense because there are so many kids that play Pokemon, but at the same time, it's such a weird series for it to happen with because, like, the game series is at least in part premised on carrying your Pokemon forward from one game to the next.
Well, also, I mean, yes, it's a good point, but also Game Freak and Nintendo are aware of the fact that it's not just kids playing.
Well, I know, but like there's like a big audience of people who are coming to each Pokemon game who would benefit from a tutorial.
Yes,
but also like there's also a significant audience for whom this is not their first Pokemon game.
And that's why I acknowledged. I understand there are new players with every generation. But this felt the most egregious in terms of hand-holding.
Yeah, like, Pokemon's interesting, and, like, Nintendo in general with these really elaborate tutorials that they do. I mean, you go from Super Mario Bros., where it's like, just play it and it teaches you as you're playing, to... We're going to tell you every little thing, including how to hit the pause button. I think one of the most hated tutorials right now that Nintendo has is the Nintendo Switch Online setup, where, like, so I have a couple of Switches, and so I just downloaded the NES and SNES online libraries to it. So it's treating it like I've never opened them before. And so it's like, it's telling you, hold these buttons to bring up this and bring up that, and there's no way to, like, just make it go. And then perpetually as you're playing, it has these prompts at the bottom of the screen. It's like, why are you forcing me to look at these? It's like, I don't want to see these. How come I don't have the option to make them go away?
Yeah, this is tricky because obviously all of us, relatively speaking, are power users, right? For us, this is like seeing Clippy in Microsoft Word, being like, go away.
Leave Clippy alone.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I was going to say, I had gone to New York for a Skylanders hands-on session. So Activision flew all these journalists over to New York, and we were at Vicarious Visions headquarters. And I remember they were talking about doing Superchargers. That was the game at the time that they were working on. And that game has a racing component to it. And they said that they had come up with like this elaborate, like, you use the stick to move and like one other button for something. And they said that what they would do is they bring the local kids in to try the games out. And they said that the kids hated this setup, which they thought would be easier for them because they were kids and in their heads, not power users, just, they're learning to play. It's like, no, the kids play the games, and they're like, I want the same setup as like Forza. So they ended up changing the control scheme because it was like, the kids actually were more savvy than we were giving them credit for. And I think to an extent, Nintendo is like trying too hard to assume, oh, they're not going to know how to play. It's like, look, dude, here's what you do. The game starts, and Professor whoever is like, do you want to learn about Pokemon, or are you good to go? And you just pick one or the other. It's like, give me the tutorial or tell me, off you go.
And then you say like, okay, well, if you change your mind, go to this menu.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And like that should be how it is with like almost every game they make. I mean, I've gone to E3s and they've had games set up in front of me, and the booth attendants like, oh, so you're going to press this and press that. And I'm like, yeah, I already know what to do. Like, I've never touched this game before and I know how to play it. Like,
well, what's strange to me is like all these, assumedly anyway, all these people who are involved in making these decisions played a game at some point. They grew up with the NES, the Atari, the Super Nintendo. I just kind of want to ask them, like, how did you figure out how to play those games? Well, you learned them by you learned as you were going. People are not incapable of still doing that today. Sure, we definitely have some quality. Some of those games could have benefited maybe from some quality of life improvements. I'm not really super married to that idea, but I can see an argument made for that. But ultimately, by and large, like, people are still capable of figuring things out as soon as you pick it up. Like, okay, what do I do with this thing? Trial and error. It's just this weird obsession that especially Nintendo has with, we have new players and we have to hold their hands. Like, no, you don't. You don't. Let people figure it out.
There are some games for which there is more complexity than can reasonably be figured out. Like Super Mario Brothers is like the famous example of like letting the player figure out how to play. Mm-hmm. But you look at an NES controller, it's the D-pad, these two buttons in the middle that don't really do much, and then like A, you press that, oh, I jump, B, you hold that, and you run. And that's the extent of the controls. And then the first stage, because the controls are so limited, the game world is so focused in its scope, the player really can figure it out as they go. Mm-hmm. A lot of games are not that simple anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think even people who did grow up on Atari or NES or Super Nintendo games they know that they learned it on the fly, but they also know that the games were much simpler in terms of like the control scheme than a lot of, like, if you look at like an Xbox 360 controller, it's much more overwhelming for somebody who's never played a game before than an NES controller is.
I mean, look at Final Fantasy XIV. So far as I can remember, when I first started, there were no real tutorials per se. It was a lot of just throwing you into the game and you figure out how to play it. You start at the, was it the Alchemist Guild in Limsa Lominsa?
Arcanist.
Yeah,
you started as an Arcanist.
Yeah, and so, you get told, go kill X number of these enemies. You just kind of figure out how to do it. And there are times, obviously, where some new mechanic will crop up, and then you'll get this message on the screen, and it'll teach you how to do that new thing, and you read a couple of slides, and then it goes away. But you don't have to sit through these tutorials that are very obviously tutorials. It's just go fight these incredibly basic enemies and you'll learn your control scheme. And then as things get more complicated and you're having to utilize more buttons and the trigger buttons on top of the shoulder buttons, you're learning and you figure it out and things pop up on the screen to tell you how to do that.
It's much more parceled out bit by bit, which as tutorials go, I definitely like... I can find that frustrating, but not as frustrating as feeling like I haven't been allowed to play the game for the first 30 minutes to an hour of a game. Yes.
Yeah, Monster Hunter has kind of struggled with this, where it's had entries where it's like, almost completely, what's the word I'm thinking for? Not imperceptible. Anyway, you can edit out this long pause after. Monster Hunter is interesting because it's like, there's this huge learning curve, and some of the games do a better job of like trying to like, oh, here's how you do this, here's how you do that, and then other games it's like, no, go through the menus if you need to. There is one form of tutorial that is maybe not as thought about, which is like player teaching player. Because like probably with like Angie and you playing Final Fantasy, it's been more you telling Angie, oh, this is what you do, versus Definitely. Angie like going through the menus.
And she never listens.
And, well, my friend Nick, he loves Monster Hunter, and I've played some of the games before, but like sitting and going through Rise, and he's like, "Oh, you do this, you do that." I'm like, this is so much more effective than any tutorial, than going through any of the menus. And in fact, now the menus are easier to go through because I know what certain things are now because of what he, taught me.
Honestly, even if you don't have a Nick or a Zack or whatever, like, I do think in a lot of cases, finding some dude's YouTube video of like the top 5 things you need to know before starting Days Gone is going to be much more useful as a tutorial than anything in the game.
See, for me, I'll look up that when it's not a video and it's just like a checklist.
I will only look up stuff like that if I'm really, really stuck and I need a visual aid. But, actually, Robert, you mentioned menus, and I think this is a good segue into the second half of the tutorial discussion is, UI and menus. And I do think that this is where, for example, like Final Fantasy XIV can get a little much. There are just, you press start, and there's all these different columns. And within each column is like, I don't know, like 10 different options for menus. And then like, even like your menu, you jump into something like, say, just your inventory. And, you can press the shoulder button 4, 5, 6 times and there's just a bunch of crap in your inventory. Like, it is very convoluted. And I think the most egregious example of this is all of the different windows on your screen. I'm not even going to pretend like this isn't how this happened. I got so frustrated because I couldn't see something. Oh, Zack and I were running a dungeon. And there's this menu that you can't close. It's there perpetually throughout the whole thing. It is blocking the actual action of the fight. And it was driving me insane. I was so angry afterwards. I told Zack, like, just however you have your menu screens set up, just go ahead and do that for mine, because that was ridiculous. And I mean, and even that is not user friendly. I don't even know where you went to do it. I know it took you a while. I was sitting there watching you move things around and reorganize the windows on the screen, but that was insane.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, too, because it starts veering a little bit into issues of accessibility. Now, that topic has just been mangled with different meaning for certain people now. But, like, in terms of, like, actual usability, I can't stand the tiny fonts. It's like, I don't get it. It's like you have these HD screens and you make the font as small as you possibly can. And I guess somebody's like, aesthetically, it looks better. It's like, yeah, and I can't read the shit. Like, make it bigger. Yeah.
That was a big problem in like circa 2007, 2008, when the developers had HD TVs, but a lot of users didn't.
Well, even now, like I remember that, like back, because I had, it was one of the Banjo-Kazooie games. I think it was Nuts and Bolts had come out. And that game got major flack because if you were playing it on a tube TV, it was super hard to read the text. I think they eventually did an update for it. Mm-hmm. But even with today's games, like I'll be sitting and playing stuff on my Switch or on my, my PlayStation or my Xbox, and I'm just looking at the screen and I'm like, why is it so small? And like some games will let you increase the size, thank God. But other times it's like, it's just too tiny. And then, there are other like little boneheaded things that will pop up. It's like, how did somebody not think about this? So like, because I've been playing on my my Xbox One a lot, I noticed, because I've been playing the 360 and the One. There's games I'm playing on each. So the 360, when you would get an achievement, it will pop up in a way where it appears on the screen. Cool, I see it. It's not interfering with anything. On the One, I have the subtitles turned on because it's easier for me to like read stuff sometimes than to hear it. So like dialogue will be going across the screen, and then I get an achievement. And they have it set up so that the achievement window pops up right over the dialogue every time. And it, like, fills it. And I'm like, I can't read. It's like, thank God I can still hear him. But, like, you're defeating the purpose of the text.
You haven't turned off your, like, achievement notifications?
I mean, I can, but I kind of like seeing when I get them. So it's like...
It's satisfying seeing that.
It's like, can you put it up top
Sounds
instead
like
of down
user
below?
No. Witcher 3 is actually a good example of an RPG that I think handles menus pretty well. I remember figuring out pretty quickly how those menus worked and not feeling like it was too convoluted or overwhelming. And then thinking of games that they go for like a streamlined aesthetic, and there's certainly a visible aesthetic, is Ghost of Tsushima and Days Gone. I found both of those menus really easy to figure out pretty fast, even though they are a bit complicated. Like for Days Gone, there's a lot going on. Ghost of Tsushima isn't super complicated. There's just a lot of stuff, but I think that it's organized really well. So I think that those are all immediate examples I can think of games that had menus that I found easy to navigate.
I definitely don't love Witcher 3's menu, but that's more. It can be kind of slow to go through like different nested levels. Like if I want to look up the bestiary entry for, I don't know, a noon wraith, I gotta go over to like one section, then into that section, then expand a section, and it's just a consequence of there being so many things in the menu.
It's certainly not perfect. There's definitely room for improvement with Witcher 3. I didn't hate it.
Yeah. Well, to be fair though, there is a section of gamer that loves the obtuse menu system.
Yes.
For them, that is a game unto itself of figuring out everything and knowing how all these things connect and work, and you go here to see this and do this and change that.
Yeah, there's even a pleasure, like, I'll be honest, it's nice to customize the HUD and the UI in Final Fantasy XIV because every player can have it set up their own way, you know?
I feel like Zach, we had a conversation with one of our friends, a former coworker, about menus. I definitely remember hearing you having a conversation with him about.
Yeah, I don't remember the details.
Yeah, but Robert is correct. Just from what I remember of that conversation, there are people who they love menus. They love going through them. They have very strong opinions about them, and if they are customizable, they will customize them.
Oh, some menus are just fun to go through. Like the classic Final Fantasy games have really satisfying menus.
Yeah.
It's just even down to like how quickly the cursor moves, the sound the cursor makes, the clicks and the colors, and all of it is really nice.
Yeah.
Well, not to expand this too much, but we're talking about UIs. It goes beyond menus too, like health systems. Like I know that a lot of people loved in Dead Space how your health meter is the lights that are on Isaac's back. And so like you see that diminish as your health goes down. So instead of having a meter on the screen, he is the meter.
We could maybe talk about like diegetic versus non-diegetic information if you want, but maybe we should close up on UI.
I think that just in terms
and tutorials.
In terms of the topic of tutorials and UI, I think for the most part I'm pretty anti-tutorial. Just throw me into the game and I'll figure it out. In terms of UI, it is going to enrage me pretty fast if something is blocking my vision or if the menus are just boneheaded and convoluted.
Yeah, I think tutorials, they have their place. I think that as time has gone on, certain setups have become very standard. So like if you play a game that's a first-person shooter prior to like Modern Warfare, they're all over the place with where the buttons are mapped. And so like play Perfect Dark on 360. Though that setup just feels so alien to me. So it's like, I need a tutorial for this. But like all the other shooters where it's mostly just like, hold left trigger, you look down sights, right trigger, you shoot. Racing games, you use the triggers for braking gas. Like you kind of stop needing the tutorial as much when everything's sort of adhering to these standards.
For you, because you've played previous Call of Duty games, you've played previous racing games, but they need to worry about onboarding players who haven't either.
Sure, but like less intrusive ways of doing it I think are the best. Whether it's just a simple overlay on the screen that you can ignore, or if you desperately need it, you can be, I gotta press these, or just entirely skippable chunks, I think is the smartest way to go about it.
For me, on the UI side of things, I feel like I'm more ambivalent about super complicated menus and things, because I do think some games just are more complicated and there's only so much you can do to really streamline that without losing some of the like customization and stuff that the game would allow if you gave it like much more fine-grained controls. Like there's an issue of consoleization of traditionally PC games where there are less things you can control because the designers have streamlined it at the expense of those options. So I'm more mixed on that. In terms of tutorial, I don't want to say I'm against tutorials outright, but in practice, I really don't think, like, no matter how much effort Nintendo, whoever puts into their tutorials, it's not going to be better than like you know, the 7-minute video from IGN or some guy named like Gamer Wolf that is just like, it's like, what's up? Remember to like, favorite, subscribe. In this video, we're going to be showing you like the 7 tips you got in it. You know, like those are obnoxious, but they're better at teaching you like the necessary things than what the professional game designers are putting in the damn games.
Yeah. Well, the next topic is a pretty contentious one for a lot of people, but grinding. Zack, I would like to turn this over to you because you had a recent example of not so good grinding, I would say, or...
Well, just to be clear, so like when we talk about grinding, and I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So like in an RPG where it's like you're going to do these battles over and over to level your character up so that your character's strong enough to take on the more powerful ones. And the more you grind outside of the bare minimum, the stronger you are and better you are set up for what comes later. Now, whether it's battling in an RPG or doing any task or activity that's going to continue to give you more ability, strength, power, whatever. That's what we mean by grinding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people do use the word grinding to refer to things that really aren't. Like what I think of as grinding is like do something over and over so that you can then later do the thing that you actually want to do.
Yes.
I think a lot of the times criticism about grinding is made about games that frankly don't require any grinding. This is a thing that like, I don't know if it's a player psychology thing, but some players will complain that like, you know, Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy VII or whatever will require a lot of grinding to get through. And those games do not require any grinding whatsoever. You can just proceed from one plot point to the next and you'll be fine.
Agreed. I'm surprised to hear that about 7. I didn't feel at any point playing 7 like I needed a grind.
But there's like a player type who sees the meter go up and be like, oh, well, I want to get fire too, so I need to get this many more AP on my materia so that I get fired too, you know?
Yeah.
And like, okay, well, that's up to you, buddy. But to take, Angela, I actually can't remember what you were trying to tee up for me.
So you had, you were playing Yakuza Like a Dragon. And
Oh, yeah.
And I think this actually resulted in you not finishing the game. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So without spoiling the specifics, I don't know like how we want to treat spoilers in games generally, but this is under a year old, so I'll be vague. Yakuza Like a Dragon is a turn-based JRPG, and it is pretty easy throughout the course of the game. So my experience playing the game was I wasn't really stressing that much about what classes my characters were. I didn't really have to go out of my way to level up. I was doing the side quests that I thought were fun and nothing beyond that, and that was working fine until shortly after the story transitions to Osaka, and then you go through kind of this essentially a dungeon and you get to the boss. And I think at that point I might have the numbers wrong. Maybe I was like level 35 with my party, and then the bosses were level 45. It was definitely 10. I was 10 levels under the recommended level suddenly, despite being seemingly at the recommended level for everything before that. One of the bits of side content I had not engaged with was like a warehouse with just a bunch of fights. And I was like, I'm not really that into the combat system in this game. I'm more here for the story. So no, thank you. But the game had been balanced on the assumption that the player would just be like, okay, warehouse full of fights. I'm going to do them all. Mm-hmm. And so the expectation is that you were supposed to just stop playing the game, grind out a bunch of fights so that you could get back to the story. I did like kind of to spite the game. I did grind out enough to get past those bosses, and then like almost immediately after that stopped. I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I didn't think this was going to be a game where I was going to have to be grinding out levels. There are games where I like that. Mm-hmm. There are like, if the gameplay is fun, then doing the gameplay is fun, right? So like if you have, that came out tautological, but you know, like if you like the random battles in Pokemon, then fighting those random battles to level up your Pokemon is fun because you're doing a thing that you like, right? I think people can be a little dismissive of like the pleasure of repeatedly doing a thing that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've mentioned this in a previous podcast. I think sometimes it boils down to a cultural thing too for some people, because like I think the act of grinding is like fundamentally Japanese in a lot of ways, or it's like, practice makes perfect, and like you think of like cramming and the incredible studiousness that goes into like education in Japan. So it's sort of the same mindset where it's like you're going to work on this over and over and over until you're so good at it, and then when it's finally time for you to do it, you're going to do it perfectly. And there's like that grinding, there's elements of it in there. And I think of like, especially like contemporary Western game journalists, they can't stand it because it's like the instant gratification crowd. It's like, well, I know I'm going to get to the point where I can do, whatever, but the game's making me do this, this, and that before I finally can. And this is just stupid. Like there were some journalists who said that grinding is just fundamentally flawed. Like it's just a bad mechanic. It's like, no, I think you're just a spoiled Westerner. But
I mean, there are games where it does, like, at least for me, it did ruin
like Yakuza,
Like a Dragon for me, but it's because I didn't like the thing that the grinding was.
Well, also, I thought at the time you had said too that it felt like the game was just kind of leaving you out of the loop in terms of what you needed to do to beat that battle. Because it was like, you made the point with like Final Fantasy, and I think Pokemon is similar. Like if you're playing Pokemon and you are fighting every single trainer on your path between towns, you tend to get to a point where your character, your Pokemon are just good enough to get you through each upcoming, gym or whatever. So like with Yakuza, it seems like the flaw was like, hey, I'm doing what it seems to be presenting me is enough to keep getting through. And then I get to this battle and suddenly it's like, oh, by the way, you didn't grind however much more. And it's like, well, I had no inkling I was this far behind. Because you can usually tell, because like the enemies you're facing will like, you're level 10, all the enemies are level 11. And you're like, okay, so I need to get to at least 11 and then preferably get to like 12 or 13 by the time I get to the next area. It feels like Yakuza like left you like cold in that regard.
So there was that where I thought I was keeping pace with the expectation, and that did kind of make it sting when I got to the end of the dungeon and was like, well, F me, I guess, like that definitely left a bad taste in my mouth. But the more fundamental issue is like, I like side battle content. Like I loved the battle square in Final Fantasy VII. I like a lot of that side stuff. I just didn't really particularly care for the combat in this game. And it seemed like they were maybe counting on that as a mechanism, even though they hadn't in like older Yakuza games with the punchy fisty combat do have like battle arenas. And I really don't engage with the battle arenas that much. And it's fine because the game's not balanced around an expectation that you will. Yeah, like for me, it did sting that it came as a surprise that I got to the end of that dungeon and then got like slapped back to my last checkpoint and realized I had to go do all that extra battling. But the bigger problem is that the game expected me in what seemed like a narratively focused game that did have this battle content throughout it, that it expected me to be interested in battle content that had no narrative hook baked into it, because I didn't care.
Yeah, like that's a tough sell with Yakuza, because it's like you've gone from these really story-centric games, and then it's throwing in this mechanic that's not really jiving. And like maybe if it didn't have Yakuza in the title, it wouldn't be the same problem, but I think that you have an expectation because it is that brand. You know what the series is, and then they kind of drop the ball on, prepping you for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, even Like a Dragon is a really story-focused game. It just had this weird approach to how much combat I expect you to do.
Well, I think what I'm driving at is, what's the term? The ludo dissonance?
You're talking about ludonarrative dissonance?
Ludonarrative dissonance, because if, like you have the Yakuza games, right? The previous ones where you have the punchy fisty, like you were saying, and it fits within that world, and it's like, you're running from objective to objective, these guys get in your path, you beat the crap out of them, wash, rinse, and repeat. Whereas with this game, it seems like there's a little bit more of a deliberate intention of, I got to go initiate these turn-based battles, and it's not quite jiving with the type of narrative that's going in the game. I don't know if that's fair. I have not played this game, by the way.
I don't know.
I'm going off of what Zach's told me.
I don't know. Like from like a ludonarrative dissonance perspective, how well that... Maybe I'd have to think about it more. I don't know.
So... I don't totally hate grinding. I mean, like the Mario RPG games, whether it's Super Mario RPG, Mario and Luigi, even the Paper Mario games. I love the battle mechanics. So to your point, Zach, I think it's fun where it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing these timing-based attacks. You know, the battles are not super long. And then, you know, if I want to get more powerful, all I got to do is seek out a few more enemies and then I can, you know, bump things up. That's actually why I think the latter Paper Mario games have failed so hard, is because they've taken away the leveling system.
Yep.
And it's like, do these these battles.
It just makes it feel like you're treading water.
Yes,
right?
and like behind the scenes, I think the game is leveling you because you hit certain milestones or
HP increases.
Yeah, stuff like that. So it's like you technically are, you know, grinding, but like when there's no reward for it, like not in the traditional sense, that's really difficult because it's like, so what am I doing this for? Why am I going to go out of my way to fight when there's really no incentive?
Yep, that I will actively avoid fights in the especially the last couple of Paper Mario games, because to Robert's point, it doesn't feel the same as doing traditional grinding and feeling like there was a reward at the end. In Mario RPG, you did level up, and you would have bonuses that you could choose. You could choose from 3 different bonuses every single time you leveled up. I think you would actually learn your different moves once you reach different levels. And so that felt a lot more rewarding than just really seeing like your HP increase in the more recent Paper Marios, and really not feeling very much like there was much of a reward at all besides coins to fighting. I
feel like Nintendo's approach with it, or Intelligent Systems, I think, are the ones who make those games. I think they were like, maybe it's simpler for inexperienced players if they don't have to deal with the leveling system. It's like, well, the only thing you're cutting out of the traditional RPG experience at this point is the leveling system, because otherwise you're equipping things.
Yep.
You have an inventory.
Yep.
They took out the carrot, but left the thing that the carrot was supposed to motivate you to get through.
Yeah, and especially too because it's like, let's be frank here. It's like, if you're thinking of it in terms of like, well, why should you have to get a reward? It's like, because it's a game. Like, we're not talking about life. It's not like, oh, I helped my aunt take the groceries in the house and now I expect a reward. If you want to tell me no at that point, I agree with you. But if I'm going to sit and go through the entire ceremony of battle starts, all the steps, the ending, here's all the coins that you earned, and it's like, and what? Nothing.
I don't know. I mean, there's something to be said for like mechanics that are rewarding on their own, and that can be fine. You don't need some kind of like extrinsic reward presented in the game. But this is a situation where they kind of took it out, right? Mm-hmm. So like first of all, it's a JRPG, so you're kind of expecting the reward system baked in. Second of all, the Mario RPGs had previously had it, right? They had better reward systems. So when they took those out, you're kind of like, well, where's the thing I wanted? I did the thing. Where's my reward? Yeah. So it's that expectation is different.
I do applaud them though, because I think that they're legitimately trying to think outside the box, but they just haven't found what works. Because like Origami King, I thought was amazing, had a really fun story, and was beautiful to look at. And I enjoyed the battle system. I know that was a point of contention for some people. But the fact that there was no traditional leveling, I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, you've made this great RPG and left out a key component. That's what it feels like.
I didn't play it, but just from watching Angela play Origami King, it did not look like a fun battle system.
I didn't care for the battle system, but the writing was better than it's been in Paper Mario games for a long time.
Since A Thousand Year Door, do you think?
Yes, I would say that. Still nothing comes near that writing. I don't know how many times I actually was genuinely laughing during that game, but I found myself really enjoying a lot of the writing in Origami King. Origami
King made me cry.
Yeah, it made me cry too.
So am I correct in thinking none of us are against grinding per se, but do think that it can just be implemented poorly?
Yes. I think that's a good way to wrap that up. I think we have time for one more. This one actually surprised me because I don't know why anyone would have a problem with this, but extra lives. However, I am going to propose an additional thing that I think is interesting to talk about. it's kind of related. There's extra lives, but also this new thing that we've seen in games like Donkey Kong Country or some of the more recent Mario games, where if you die enough, something will come up to try and help you. So whatever you want to call that, some sort of aid. So that's I think is the last topic that we will discuss.
The helping hand of shame.
Yes. I guess I'll just start this one off. I don't get what the problem with extra lives is. I find that a very odd thing for someone to have a problem with.
Maybe elaborate on what you mean exactly by that.
Let me make the case for why extra lives are bad.
Okay.
Which is not something I believe, but
okay.
just to try and like convey the opposition.
Okay.
It's not getting extra lives. That's fun. It's running out of lives. Because what happens when you run out of lives is like you have to restart the level or you have to go back to an old save. And then so it's just kind of like too punishing, basically. Like somebody who's maybe not good at a Mario game is, you know, they fall into a pit too many times. Now they have to go all the way back to the start of the world or whatever, you know.
I mean, you know, I don't know how many times it happened to me playing Mario 3. Like, it just, in my opinion, it just increases the challenge. Sure, it sucks. And yes, you're frustrated in the moment. I'm not going to sit there and act like I'm like, oh yeah, this is fantastic, you know, while I'm get booted back to level 1 and I was in like, you know, right towards the end. But no, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I just think it's part of the game. It's part of the challenge. The expectation is that you're getting better and better and you're collecting enough coins or finding enough mushrooms or whatever it is to get those extra lives. And, you know, if you lose them all.
Yeah. I know one of the other topics that we're not talking about directly is like unavoidable damage in games. A cheap death was another one. And you can kind of like batch all these together and say like, there are mechanics you can put in the game to make it more challenging. And when you trip up on one of those challenges, it can be frustrating in the moment, right? Like I'm out of lives. Oh, now I got to do the stage 1 again, right? Or I didn't see that coming. Now I got to walk back from the checkpoint, right? But if you take all of those out to like smooth out the frustrations, like you can't just be like, you know what sucks is losing. We should make a game where you can only win, right? Because like there's no thrill, or there's no ecstasy in winning if there was no chance of anything except winning.
Yes, and I mean, in terms of the helping hand of shame, as you put it, I don't want to see it. Like, yes, I know, I'm aware of the fact that I keep dying. No, I don't need help. I don't want help. I feel like that's something that you should be able to turn off. Like there should be in the menu system at the game, at the start of the game, you should be able to go into the menu and turn that off. It won't appear no matter how many times you die.
The most stressful part, I don't remember what the threshold is, but like they do this in Mario 3D World, I think, where they have like the white Tanuki suit or whatever it is. The most stressful thing is, let's say it's like you die 5 times and this happens. The most stressful thing is after I've died 4 times, I'm like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. It's like that's the most white knuckle experience. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of like respawning, and it's like, oh, I see you really suck at this game. Do you want some help with this level?
I believe so. Like that doesn't really bug me that much. But what did bug me is I think in Mario Galaxy, if you end up seeing the helping hand of shame, what happens is, even if you don't use it, there's this thing where it's like you can get, I think, 5 stars on your file. But if that hand ever showed up, the stars will never twinkle. So it's like, seriously? It's like, so even though I didn't take the damn helping hand, I'm still punished anyway, where your stars aren't going to shine. You got all 242 stars, but, that pissed me off. I would turn the system off and make sure it wouldn't save if it happened.
Man, I'm not opposed to the game keeping track of how many times you died. You know, like even like the original Zelda has that baked in. Yeah. It's like there's like a little bit of shame in there. Like it's like, really? You died 17 times, right? But like it seems like a bad match for a game as long as Mario Galaxy, right?
Well, to me, part of Mario, especially the original ones, is dying. Because it comes from experimenting with the world. Because when the world's full of secrets, it's like, well, if I go down this hole, it actually is a shortcut, or it's it takes me to a different area. so I'm going to go for it. And if I die, I die. It's like, so you are in essence making people not want to do that because it's like, oh, well, then you're going to get the stupid helping hand. It's like, well, I don't want to see it, so I'd rather just go the safe route instead.
Yep.
Yeah, like screw that, you know. And then the extra lives thing, I mean, to me, it comes from the same mindset of the same type of journalist I was complaining about earlier, where it's like, oh, basically, I don't want to get any punishment for sucking. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, don't end the game and make me do this over or do that over, you know, or, you know, it makes me feel bad because I've saw the continues. It's just like, you know, there are reasons that certain things are put in games back in the day. Like there's, you know, it's been talked to death how arcade games were designed for you to get killed. And so some of that mentality carried over into the home consoles where it was like a bad habit to break. And so some people see extra lives as kind of like a carryover of that to an extent. And I think some games have done a really good job of like doing away with lives. Celeste is a good example of that. So like Celeste, I've never been angrier playing a game, ever. I think the closest I've come was I played Wave Race, what the heck is the one on GameCube called?
Blue Storm?
Yes, I played Blue Storm, and I had it on the highest difficulty level. It was the ultimate rubber band combatants. So I'm flying around these corners doing beautifully, and you had to be beyond beautiful and perfect to beat these guys. So that made me angry. But Celeste, oh my god, next level fury in terms of dying. But the thing that I loved was that it knew, as soon as I'm dead, I want to go again. And there was no impediment. You're dead, boom. You're right back to where you were, and you just keep trying over and over and over and over, even if you died 100 times. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's something it took straight from Meat Boy.
Yeah, that's right. Credit to Meat Boy. But, you know, there's times where I think it can be implemented well. But, like, if you have a more traditional, you know, life system, like in a Mario game, it's, like, big deal. It's like, you know, no, it's straight up, get good.
Yep. Yeah.
I do think that it's part of the way, it's part of the, like, palette of tools that a game designer has to make a game challenging or rewarding or whatever. It doesn't make sense to me to say, like, well, you can't have unavoidable damage, or you can't have a live system, or you can't have limited continues, or you can't have a time limit, or you like whatever it is. Like all these to me seem like perfectly valid ways to lay out that challenge for a particular game.
Well, it kind of veers into a little bit of the talk about like accessibility and difficulty levels, and like games like the Souls games where it just kicks your ass, and people think that it's exclusionary somehow because it's so hard. It's like, you know, I just can't do it. You know, it's like, okay, well, it's not made for you then. Like, you know, seriously, not everything is made for everyone. Yep. Like, you got to come to terms with maybe you're not the audience.
Yep.
Get over yourself. It's like, so when you have a game that's ridiculously easy, like, let's say you were desperately wanting to play the tie-in game to Cars 3 or something. Like, are you going to sit there and say, well, you know, I'm being excluded because I get first place and lap everyone every single time? It's yeah, because that game wasn't designed for you. Like, the Souls game is made for a certain audience, and frankly, it is designed for you to continue getting better if you take it seriously and are learning from what you're doing. But still, it's like, even if you get to a point where it's just like, you can't handle it, it's like, okay, go trade it in at GameStop.
Yeah, it's weird. This complaint only really comes up with action games, which in a sense makes sense if the complaint is accessibility. But I don't know, have either of you played Baba Is You?
No.
No, but I remember you showed me that game.
Yeah. Or The Witness. Those are both examples of like puzzle type games that I've played in the last couple of years where I got to a point where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know how to solve this, right? Which you could cast as an accessibility thing, right? Like, what if a puzzle is too hard for somebody to think through? But like, that's fine, right? Like, what remedy could there realistically be that wouldn't fundamentally change or damage the puzzle? Like, I know I could like look up the solutions to Baba Is You levels online, but at that point, that doesn't seem that different from telling somebody that if they can't beat Sekiro, they should just watch a YouTube video of it.
Well, I do think that maybe there's a difference between like the designer just is not realizing, hey, this thing that you think is obvious is not, versus it's just extremely challenging. because like Tokitori 2 came out, a while back. I think it was a Wii U game at first. And they had this whole idea of like, there's going to be I think it was like no text of any kind. Like everything was going to be communicated through like visuals. And there were problems with like, I think navigating the puzzles because people were just like, there's no prompts here that I can understand. I remember they had to rework that one if I'm recalling it correctly. So like that's an example of maybe truly an accessibility issue where it's like, hey, this form of communication that you came up with didn't actually work.
We can come up with a distinction between like challenge that was intended by the designer versus challenge that was accidental.
Yep.
My hands were too small for me to really be successful at hard and expert mode in Guitar Hero and Rock Band. So I just moved on to the drums in Rock Band, and I was fine.
Is that why you gravitated to drums? Because your tiny hands could hold the sticks?
It was part of it. It wasn't the motivating factor. I've always kind of been, as much as I love guitar work, and I do, I've also really kind of paid attention to the drums.
Matt Tong.
Yeah, Matt Tong from formerly of Block Party. Really kind of awakened that appreciation I have for drums. But no, just the point being, that was maybe a genuine accessibility issue, but I was just kind of like, whatever, I'll just try the drums.
Yeah, like I'm tempted to say I'm biased, but I refuse because I just genuinely think it's a mental defect. Like I think that this generation is just like instantly, I give up, I'm upset, cater to me. Yeah. Because like I had trouble with the guitar in Guitar Hero going past medium. And I remember one night, like I just kept trying over and over and over. And one night I had a fever and we were at my grandma's house and I'm sitting playing it. And I had it on, at this point it was hard, not very hard. And something about my fever brain rewrote my ability to play. And I just remember I started hitting all the notes. And I was like, okay, I'm going past the 3 notes. I'm hitting the 4 notes. And like, it took a lot of effort and practice and time, but I finally did it. And I was like, I'll never play it any other way. Yep. And so
you wouldn't remember that at all if it had been easy for you.
Exactly. Yep. And I just think that's lost on some contemporary gamers because I think there's this desire to just conflate everything with some kind of equity issue in terms of accessibility. And I just don't think that it always fits.
Yeah.
I think what you said much earlier in this segment was something I agree with, that like not every game is for every person. I think in terms of accessibility, it's important for everyone to have access to a wide swath of games and be able to find things that are right for them, to be able to find experiences and games that entertain them. But like you end up imposing a ton of limitations on the kinds of games that can be made if you insist that every game is for every person.
Yes.
Yeah, especially too because it's like you wouldn't say that about content. So if I want to go play, how do you pronounce it? Hatoful boyfriend?
Hatoful, the
pigeon one? Birds, the romance bird game or whatever it is. It's like that's clearly not for everyone. I mean, everyone can try it, but if you're going to pretend that's not like this is for a certain niche audience, it's like that's cool. Or the Senran Kagura games. It's like not everyone wants the anime boob game, but there is the crowd that does. And so what, are we going to not make that game because, not everyone's into that? It's like, cool, then you can go play, Ninja Gaiden. This is for that crowd.
It's interesting because it really only is like action games that get this, and action gameplay specifically that gets this focus. Baba Is You, like I mentioned, no one is asking for like a version of Baba Is You that is easier to solve, right? Nobody is asking for Tetris. Nobody is asking for a version of Resident Evil 7 that is less scary, right? Yeah. Like people do have hang-ups or limitations that prevent them from enjoying certain games.
Yeah, I could not play Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
I just could not do it. And that's fine. It's like if I really want to see it, I can, maybe watch you play it if you'll ever pick it up again, or I can watch YouTube videos of it. There are workarounds, but yeah, I mean, you just have to admit, like, there are things that you either don't like or you can't play for particular reasons, and it is what it is. And I mean, that is life. It's not trying to be flippant. That is life. Life is not everything is for you. You're not going to be good at everything. You're going to try things. you're going to try games, you're going to try whatever, and you're just simply not going to be good at them.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
And I think that when a studio comes up with good concessions, that they should be applauded. You know, it's like there are versions of, you know, Sony's endless, you know, the Sony games that we're talking about, where it's like, I'm more interested in the narrative. Cool. Here's an easy ass version of it where you're getting all the narrative and you're not going to lose. Or I think there's even some studios now that are implementing like the game will play through this section for you. In fact, I can't remember if one of the Nintendo games recently did that.
You are right, though, that you'll get the settings at the beginning of a game, the difficulty setting, and it'll say straight up, the easiest one will be you're most concerned about the narrative.
Yeah.
There are even some games, I can't remember where I've seen this before, but games where like the difficulty settings at the beginning will have like a different difficulty setting for combat versus puzzles versus like other things, like actually let you, because if you just don't want to think about the puzzles, but you're good at action combat, you might make a different decision than somebody else, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's cool because it's, you know, it's not dummying it down for anyone who doesn't want it. You know, and you're not, you know, you're not limiting the developer. But I do think that when you show up and say, well, you have to include that in the game, you know, like you have to have those features. That's where I start to kind of push back because it's like, hey, man, if Sony wants to sit and give you 20 different versions of how to set the settings and make it to you, that's cool. But if this other studio is like, yeah, there's one, there is no difficulty level.
Yeah.
It's just the game.
I mean, obviously the central game or games of the difficulty is accessibility conversation have been the Souls games and then Sekiro, right? And in those cases, like, I think what often doesn't get said is that there is a feeling that those games provide which would not be there if the difficulty was like user selectable.
I just pushed back on saying that any game has to have accessibility for all, or any game has to have anything at all. I don't care what it is, because I just consider games art, and a game is someone's art. And I understand, obviously, a game, I mean, you have to be able to play it to enjoy it. It's not like just viewing a painting or something, but to me, art is art, and if a developer wants to implement certain things or does not want to implement some certain things, that is their prerogative. Take it or leave it. Enjoy their art as they intended it to be enjoyed.
I think that's a worthwhile point to make, because like, yeah, it is fundamentally like a more like consumer product point of view to be like, I paid $60 for it, I should be able to get every bit of toothpaste out of that tube.
Yes, and people I think are not understanding that there are artists and writers behind these games. I mean, they're like movies in that sense too, like saying a movie has to have this or a movie cannot have this. If I
can't understand the message, then you did something wrong.
Yeah, it's just like the you know, like movies, you know, the director, the writers, the producers, they have a narrative, they have a story they want to tell. In most cases, you know, unless it's a game of a certain genre, take it or leave it. Enjoy the experience as they created it, and if you don't enjoy the experience, it wasn't meant for you. And that's that, really, in my opinion.
And this is also a good reason to play games on PC so that you can mod them to your heart's content. If you don't like the vision of the game makers, then you can take care of it, right? It's not an obligation you put on Miyazaki or FromSoft to make Sekiro different. It's some modder came up with a way to slow down the gameplay. So if that's really what you want to do, knock yourself out.
Well, thank you, Zack, for your plug.
So I think it's probably a good place to wrap it.
Yes.
Was there any rapid fire quick points on there that we'd like to get to on our list?
No, I think this is a good place to end it.
I think the only last point I would like to make is in terms of really great UI design, I love the HUD in Metroid Prime. It's so brilliant the way it's set up, where it's like, it's showing you everything that you need to do in terms of like buttons and prompts and everything, but it's Samus's helmet. Like, it's actually her HUD. And so, like, you know, everything from like your visors to the different beams, all of it is laid out in there, and it's like, wow, like it's it's for me, the player, but you can realistically be like, this is what she'd be seeing in her helmet.
That was a real mid-90s trend. And maybe in a longer version of this episode, we could have talked about like the diegetic versus non-diegetic UI. You mentioned Dead Space earlier. Certainly that's part of why Audiologs exist as a thing. It's like diegetic ways of presenting this information, but it can be good regardless.
Well, thank you for joining us on this episode. We are going to go enjoy a tasty, delicious 4th of July barbecue. And when you hear this, it will not be the 4th of July at all.
Please throw out any leftover hot dogs.
Yes. And wishing our fellow Americans a very happy 4th of July. Go play some games and enjoy yourself.
Happy 4th.